Hidden America's History, 1496 to 1776. The Age of Discovery, from 1492 to 1550. Cristoforo Colombo, pronounced Cristoforo Colombo. That's his Italian, Genoese name, but he often used the Spanish Cristobal Colon. Amerigo Vespucci, pronounced Amerigo Vespucci, was an Italian navigator, and actually, America is named after him. Giovanni Caboto, pronounced Giovanni Caboto, was another Italian navigator, but he sailed for England and is known as John Cabot. Juan de la Cosa, pronounced Juan de la Cosa, was a Spanish cartographer and explorer. Vasco Núñez de Balboa, pronounced Vasco Núñez de Balboa, was the first European to see the Pacific. Juan Ponce de León, pronounced Juan Ponce de León, explored Florida. Fernão de Magalhães, pronounced Fernão de Magalhães, was a Portuguese explorer who sailed for Spain and is also known as Ferdinand Magellan. Hernando de Soto, pronounced Hernando de Soto, explored the American Southeast. Jacques Cartier, pronounced Jacques Cartier, explored the St. Lawrence River. Giovanni da Verrazzano, pronounced Giovanni da Verrazzano, explored the Atlantic coast. Just a quick note on pronunciation. Colombo, in Italian or Genoese, the O sounds are really distinct, not like the in English Columbus. For Magalhães, in Portuguese, the LH is a liquid LE sound, and O is a nasal vowel. For de la Cosa in Spanish, the J sounds like an H, and the Z sounds like Th, like in Spain. So race versus ethnicity. In a modern U.S. Census context, Latino is an ethnicity, not a race. European roots. The explorers I just listed, like Colombo, Caboto, and Cartier, were from European countries like Italy, Spain, Portugal, and France. They were Hispanic descendants. The Latino label specifically refers to people with origins in Latin America, like Mexico, Central or South America, and the Caribbean. But since these explorers were born in Europe before those Latin American nations even existed, they aren't technically Latino. The Hispanic distinction is that they could be called Hispanic if they were from Spain or worked for the Spanish crown, since that term includes the people and language of Spain. So, in short, they were Europeans whose actions eventually led to the creation of Latino cultures through the blending of European, Indigenous, and African peoples. European invasion, 1776. To understand the chronology of independence, it's helpful to look at it as a sequence, starting from the initial break with Britain to the official adoption of the Declaration of Independence. The Road to the Declaration, 1776. January 10th. Thomas Paine publishes Common Sense, a pamphlet that sways public opinion toward complete independence. April 12th. The Halifax Resolves make North Carolina the first colony to officially authorize its delegates to vote for independence. June 7th. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia introduces a formal resolution in the Continental Congress stating that the colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. June 11th. Congress appoints the Committee of Five: John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert R. Livingston, and Roger Sherman to draft a formal declaration. From June 11th to June 28th, Thomas Jefferson writes the primary draft, which is then reviewed and edited by Adams and Franklin. Okay, so here's how it all went down. First, Congress got back together on July 1st to debate the Lee Resolution. There were some hesitations at first when they took the initial votes, so the final decision was put off for a bit. But then, on July 2nd, Congress officially adopted the Lee Resolution. That was the actual legal act that separated the colonies from Great Britain. Then, after 2 whole days of debating and editing Jefferson's draft, Congress formally approved the Declaration of Independence on July 4th and ordered it to be printed. Just a few days later, on July 8th, the very first public reading of the Declaration happened in Philadelphia's State House yard. By August 2nd, most of the 56 delegates had signed the official parchment copy of the document. And finally, here's how the struggle wrapped up. On October 19th, 1781, the British surrendered at Yorktown, which pretty much ended the big fighting in the colonies. Then, on September 3rd, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed, and Great Britain officially recognized the independence of the United States. Pretty awesome, right? Western expansion, starting from 1796 and onward, led to Indigenous Wars and what is known as the Great Dying. The arrival of Europeans triggered a Great Dying, you know? While warfare was constant, diseases like smallpox and measles killed up to 90% of the indigenous population. In the 1500s, Spanish conquistadors like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro toppled the Aztec and Inca empires. They did this through a mix of superior weaponry and strategic alliances with local tribes who really didn't like the ruling empires. For 300 years, the British and later Americans pushed west. Key conflicts included King Philip's War in 1675 and the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, where tribes like the Cherokee were forcibly removed. The result was that indigenous populations were pushed onto reservations, and their lands were reorganized into private property under European law. It's a pretty tough part of history, right? Slavery and the Atlantic system were like major parts of history. As indigenous populations plummeted, Europeans turned to Africa for labor to fuel the global economy, with crops like sugar, cotton, and tobacco. The Middle Passage was this horrible journey where millions of Africans were kidnapped and shipped across the Atlantic. Even though the U.S. received about 400,000 enslaved people, the vast majority went to Brazil and the Caribbean, mainly for sugar plantations. This unpaid labor built the modern global banking and insurance systems, as well as the industrial wealth of Europe and the Americas. It's incredible how much of the world today was shaped by those times. The Hispanic Wars and Western expansion were pretty significant too. The 1800s were defined by a shift in power from Spanish control to U.S. control. This idea of manifest destiny, where the U.S. believed they were destined to own the continent, led to the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848. The U.S. ended up taking 55% of Mexico's territory, like California, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and more. This turned millions of Mexican citizens into foreigners in their own land overnight. Then there was the Spanish-American War in 1898, where the U.S. officially ended Spain's empire in the Americas, taking control of Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Philippines. It's pretty wild how much things changed back then. Colonial evils and separatism have really shaped modern history. There's this constant tension between centralized European control and those wanting to break away. It all began with the American Revolution in 1776, followed by the Haitian Revolution, which was the only successful slave revolt resulting in a nation, and the Latin American Wars of Independence, led by figures like Simón Bolívar. Colonialism left behind casta systems, or racial hierarchies, that still affect social class in Latin America today. And then there were Jim Crow, or segregationist laws that impacted the U.S. well into the 20th century. At a glance, you can see the power shift through different eras. In the 1500s and 1600s, it was about Spain and Portugal with religious conversion and gold extraction. The 1700s and 1800s saw Britain, France, and the U.S. with industrial slavery and land expansion. And from the 1900s to now, the United States has had cultural influence and economic colonial control. Thanks for watching, everyone.